Hello, I'm Shahbaz Ahmed. As we previously met, I'm a graduate student at the State University and reporting for this event. So we would like to hear you about industrial health physics.
Okay. Well, I'm Scott Winters. I'm a retired industrial health physicist. I did radiation safety for a variety of industries regarding both man-made and natural reactors. I did that for a little over 30 years. And I had several companies that I had developed or acquired and sold in that period of time. As far as the different industries, anything from paper and pulp industry, steel mills, oil and gas, both upstream and downstream, refining, petrochemicals. So with respect to the type of health physics I would be involved in, a lot of times involved dose assessments for exposures that were unplanned, either from an orphan source that was recovered, or some other type of mishap that we have that occurred either due to failure to do surgery or failure to know the radiological conditions that existed.
So at one particular time, you would be having contacts with multiple organizations.
Yes.
So there would be like no single employer for you.
No, that's correct. Yes, I've had the opportunity to work with both federal and state and local agencies, as well as a variety of different industry representatives.
So you were like employed by some consultancy firm, or you have your own one?
I have my own consulting firm.
That's good. Yeah. So back in Pakistan, when I was there before coming to the US, I was planning to either do PhD or start my consultancy firm. And I opted PhD first.
Okay.
So after finishing my PhD, I will return back to Pakistan. I'm a Fulbright scholar. I'm being funded by them to complete my PhD. And they require me to go back to Pakistan. So over there, I'm happy to serve over there. Sure. So I would like start a consultancy firm as soon as I would go there.
Okay.
So yeah, I will be in touch with you. I hope so. To get your insights. How can I be successful in a consultancy like sort of role?
Sure.
So just to recap it, when you were like serving, what was a typical day for you?
A typical day was not so typical. We did basic contamination testing, that we provided analytical services for people who had sealed sources. So I would check on the lab there, check the quality control, see how things were going. We also did repair and calibration services, so I would also check with the technical manager to see how things were going in that arena. Also some jobs involved on-site repairs or modifications, so make sure that a lot of times we were called out last minute, like an oil and gas operation where maybe they had an explosion at the well site, and so maybe their sources of red, sources of volume, moisture density, or something like that, or level gauges. And so while the fire crews are putting out or containing the fire, then we would go in and recover the reactive material, make sure it's no contamination, containment control, and then preparation for fire disposition.
It's interesting that every day we would have different experiences.
Different things.
Yeah.
Airplane that went down that had medical isotopes on it. To someone finding suspecting that reactive material in the basement because their grandfather used to do radiography work.
Oh.
So yeah, just given airports, older airports, radiant contamination. So lots of different, just never knew what was going to be on the phone call. And typically it would always be the real emergencies that happen towards the end of the week. So you'd be stuck working over the week.
Yeah, that's true. So I remember like when I was a master's student, our teacher told us like somewhere in subcontinent, they had difficulty in like figuring out what is the like piping system of their like water in an old building. So what they do, they put a like trace amounts of really detail, and then they just figured out like they just nabbed it.
They followed them.
Yeah. That
Um,
was good. Yeah.
Yes, I've heard that both with radioisotopes or loose, as well as using a check source on the string.
Yeah.
And I know you go through using a simulator to follow the track.
Yeah, it's interesting. So most of people they opt radiotherapy when they go to medical physics, but this field is quite interesting. If someone is like a travel guy, an adventure guy,
Sure,
this is the best
absolutely.
position for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to travel virtually anywhere.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the most fun during the event, but the thing I like about it is the people. Because you always meet from operators at a low rig to executive vice presidents that are concerned about risk perception for products and byproducts. And everyone in between. It's just been a really nice activity. And one of the other things that we did a lot of was training. And not only classroom training, but also online, web-based training.
It's a good experience, I believe. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
We were here at this event and we have a great speaker with us. So Lawrence Code, he is from MD Anderson Cancer Center and he will be talking with us about this event as well as career in medical. In first year, like I would like to know more about you, like how you were interested in medical physics.
So I've been doing medical physics for, I don't know, 20 years or so. I started off in imaging physics, so I'm from the UK, I did my PhD in digital mammography in London. And then I worked in industry in Japan for a while, worked for Canon, companies like that, and R&D, making X-ray equipment. And then I decided, just change of heart really, I guess. I wanted to work in hospitals. Came over to the States, did a postdoc at MD Anderson, left, and eventually came back to MD Anderson. So now, after 6 or 7 years of clinical work, I'm now back in research.
And what is a typical day for you?
That's a difficult question. So I run a group of somewhere between 10 and 15 researchers. It ranges between 4 and 8 graduate students, so mostly PhDs, sometimes we have a master's student, and faculty, computational scientists, research assistants, that sort of thing. So most of my day is spent working with them on research projects.
So yeah, I think it's a cool routine. Like working in.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I love it
you
a
have
lot.
a lot of good minds around you,
Yeah.
and you're ultimately working towards the patient care. It's a good field, I believe. So, what suggestions do you have for earlier career physicists or graduate students in general?
So for graduate students, I think these are exciting times. So I would be prepared for change. So I don't think our field is going to be the same by the time you graduate. So you'll be graduates. The conference that we're at today, and all the conferences this year, artificial intelligence has really been a big thing. I think we're trying to cut costs, and we're trying to improve the quality of care. And AI is really going to help us with that to really change the job. So if you look at the job that clinical medical physicists do now and have done for the last 10 years or so, that's going to change significantly. So it's exciting. It's going to be different.
Yeah. So is it a concern like in future we will have less positions for medical physicists? Because these days we have physicists for planning in some countries or in some centers, but in future we expect like if planning is completely automized, then like we will be out of jobs. Is it correct?
Well, so there's definitely going to be a change. I think what I feel is we're going to have less qualified or certified medical physicists and more people working like physics assistant type people. There's going to be an increase in that. Just because of keeping costs down, it has to move in that way anyway. For the people who are doing the treatment plans, I don't think it's going to go quite as far as you suggest. I think that in the next 5 to 10 years, in the States at least, we'll have a lot more automation of treatment planning. So that's for sure. But there's still going to be, that really gives the opportunity to finesse some plans. But there's a lot of things that computers don't necessarily know that the physicians may know from a physical exam, talking to the patient. So there's still going to be a role of finessing and fine-tuning the plans. I think so that with overall quality of plans going to be better because we can use our time better.
Yeah,
It's gonna
so
change.
we would just be using technology. We would not be out of jobs.
Oh, I
Definitely.
don't, I don't think we'll be out of jobs. I think there will be a change in the overall workplace. Yeah.
That is true. And what would you suggest for developing countries, like those who have less finances or like infrastructure is not developed to the extent that is in developing countries? Because I'm from Pakistan,
Yes.
I would go back over there after
Yeah.
finishing my PhD.
Okay.
I would serve over there.
Yes.
So how do you see the situation for developing countries? Because at this moment, most of the countries they still have cobots. And in US,
Yes.
I don't think like in any cancer center they have cobots. So if we consider US fully like automated computerized treatment planning system,
Yes. Yes.
but in those countries we would still have like cobots. Right? If they get rid of cobots, but still they would have like second generation DNX. So what do you think? Like how is it change for developing countries? How
Yes.
should they manage?
So I think it's going to change there too. So even you shouldn't think of cobalt. I don't think as a secondary treatment device. You can treat patients perfectly well with cobalt. You can't. Well, I mean, apart from a few research projects, it's difficult. You can't really do an IMRT type treatment, but you can do a lot of other treatments. You know, cobalt does work, so we shouldn't dismiss it in that sense. I think there is a move away from cobalt for sure. But I think, in many cases, cobalt is a perfectly good tool.
Yeah.
In terms of infrastructure, I think AI is going to help those places too. I mean, it's difficult to generalize because everyone's different. But there is if you don't have enough people, AI can only help you.
Yeah.
Right. So here you ask a question about jobs, and maybe that's a concern here in this country.
Yeah.
But if you've only got a limited number of skilled people, AI can only help. It's got to be a good thing so it's a good thing for most people. It's a good thing for everybody. It's just easier to appreciate in the sorts of senses that you're talking about. So I think the general quality and consistency will improve because AI is going to help with that. And along with that, we will be able to offer, it'll be easier to offer the more advanced treatments. Yeah, I mean, in summary, I think this is an exciting time for everybody, actually. I think a lot of these tools will be available at much lower cost as well, so I think that will help.
I believe it will be getting more exciting in future.
Yeah.
It will get more exciting.
Yeah, I think so.
And definitely, like medical physics would have to know more about like AI and like have good grasp of coding and other stuff if they want to be a good medical physicist in future.
Yeah. There's no question about that. But knowing the basics as well, because I think in the future, okay, here there may be less of this, and the field will change for sure, but you still need to understand when you're measuring the dose, what are you measuring, what are the uncertainties, as because new techniques will come in, new machines will come in, somebody has to understand that. So those basics, I think, will still be very important.
Yeah, that's true. Just like the 2D treatment planning is still helpful for learning.
Yes.
If you don't do that, you cannot learn the 3D.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
We were in your talk. So in the talk, I kind of a little bit know about the role of conservatories. I was amazed, like with knowledge management planning or sort of something. And we would like to know more about you, like how the role is it, and what is in that role for a medical graduate.
Okay, well, I mean, in general, medical dosimeters and physics actually work very closely together. So if we're looking at kind of like a timeline of a patient comes into the department and they've been diagnosed with cancer, they've opted for radiation treatment, the first step is they go in and they get a CT scan. And then that's when a dosimetrist kind of takes over. And what our job really is to look at where the tumor is on the CT scan and figure out how we're going to get a prescription dose to that tumor while sparing all of the surrounding organs. So I like to say it's kind of like a puzzle, right? So you have to figure out, okay, so this is the location of the tumor, here's the spinal cord, how are we going to get all this dose to the tumor and give almost none of it to the spinal cord. So really what we're doing is we're playing around with different beam geometry, beam angles, energies, and really modulating the dose to kind of create this conformal dose distribution around the tumor while sparing all of the critical organs. And then basically after we finish our plan and the doctor signs off and says, yeah, it's good, we like it, that's kind of when we pass it off to the physicist. And then what their job is to look at our plan and make sure that we haven't overlooked anything, that it works on the machine. Because unfortunately with a lot of these planning systems, you're looking at a CT scan and it doesn't tell you what is and isn't physically feasible on the machine. And then, in a lot of cases, the physicist will then take that plan and they'll run it through QA and make sure that the readout of what's being delivered on the machine matches what we've planned and what we're intending to do. And make sure that there's no like collision issues or things like that. So they kind of take the plan over after us and make sure that from a quality assurance standpoint, it's delivering what it's supposed to and making sure that it's a feasible plan. We do work very closely together, and there are some special procedures too where it's kind of like a combined effort between dosimetrist and a physicist. So that's really good too. So sometimes we actually do sit down with the physicist and put it together, especially for like different protocols and things like that.
So, like in my country, I know in Pakistan, I'm here for almost like PhD, I go back and serve there.
Nice.
It is only the role of a physicist, so they tag the dosimetrist as physicists, like junior physicists, and then they promote them like after 5 years. So how it works here in US? So most of the dosimetrists, do they end up being a medical physicist later or what?
No, so the U.S. is kind of unique in that, because in Canada, actually, similarly groups radiation therapists and dosimetrists together, so that's kind of one role. So I think it really varies kind of geographically in terms of what the dosimetrist role is and whether it's its own role or something different. I mean, honestly, in the U.S., becoming a medical physicist is difficult, time-consuming. So in the U.S. at least, dosimetrist is its own kind of defined role. So certainly some dosimetrists do go on to do physics. Actually, I was just talking to a woman, Angie, who works at Fort Hamilton, and she, I believe, started in dosimetry and then moved on to physics. And it would probably be a pretty easy transition in terms of like conceptually, but that's not a very common career path, if that answers your question. But like I said, fortunately in the U.S. it is kind of its own defined role. So, what is a very common career path though is actually going from radiation therapy, so being a therapist, and transitioning into dosimetry role, which is actually what I did. I went to school for therapy and then went on and studied dosimetry and became a dosimetrist. So,
yeah. People like sometimes they do transition that even doesn't make sense.
Oh yeah.
So, but this transition it makes sense. And over there in Barbados, we also have one of the therapists who
Oh really? Yeah, that's neat. That's great. Yeah.
So,
it is. One thing that is kind of neat about dosimetry though is that you do. It's kind of this. So you're behind the scenes enough where you're not super connected to the patient, but you still have enough like hands-on with the patient's care where you still feel like that rewarding feeling of being in the field, but you're not so connected to the patient that it becomes kind of like an emotional experience or anything like that. So that's one thing that I really like about it. When I was in therapy, I was like, this is just too much, it's emotional, and I think you kind of take your work home with you a lot, but with dosimetry, you're still helping this patient, but you're helping them from behind the screen, which is kind of a nice disassociation. So
it's just like being an anonymous reader.
yeah, exactly. Anonymous hero. I'm gonna put that on my resume.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And it was nice having a good talk with you.
Yeah, it was great. It was great meeting
Yeah,
you.
it was great. and I hope you will be coming to the next meeting as well. And these meetings are really good, and positivity student is really
Oh yeah. No, I think it's great for like all different role groups to kind of just interact with each other's organizations. I mean, honestly, I got a lot of questions today. I wasn't expecting that, but I do think that sometimes you forget all of the different pieces that go into all of the different roles in a patient's care. I think it would be really interesting to have more of just like a radiation oncology conference where you could have, physicians, nurse therapists, physicists. And it would probably be a really good platform to talk about even just like workflow and how different clinics operate and how you can kind of use like best practices and things like that. So that's great. You should get that going.
We thought like you are a resident.
Yeah.
So I would like to have your first-hand experience on how is it to be a resident, a medical physics resident.
Well, I mean, honestly, like any kind of resident, whether you're medical physics or if you're medical resident, you're given a lot of responsibilities, and there's a lot to do, and there's a lot to learn quickly. Fortunately for myself, I'm very well prepared for my program, my master's program, to get a position where I was very strong in most of my knowledge, and the main thing is trying to figure out how you can fit within that new system, learning where the boundaries are for the clinicians as to what they expect from you and how to interact with it. It's probably the most important aspect. But overall, it's been a very good experience. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of stuff you learn that you, without experiencing it, there's no possible way you can learn it. And I strongly feel that residencies are kind of like, initially when they were announced that, hey, this is something I have to do, every one of us learns it. But I strongly feel that it's an important and integral part of medical physics education.
That's cool. So can you tell us like how were you attracted to medical physics? Or how were you introduced? Like during your undergrad or later?
I was first introduced to medical physics in my undergrad. I was actually introduced to photographing therapy very early on. I did a research project back in I did a presentation about that guy got my years of training. Unfortunately for myself, I didn't get certified in physics. I knew that was something I wanted to do, but I wasn't committed at the time. So I spent I wanted to go into medicine, and so I went into school in Berkeley. Spent 2 years doing that, and then came back from that after discovering that it didn't quite suit my interests as much, and I wasn't well put out for the type of organization that I was specifically. And so I came back, and obviously I've got a strong medical background. I've got a strong background in physics, and I have my BS in physics. And I decided the most logical place for me to go in medical physics. And
It's a good choice.
yeah, for me it's worked out very well. I'm fascinated with our day-to-day activities, and all the technology and all the benefit we're given to the community.
So for this event, like how do you like it? Like is it a good like for students to come to chapter meetings?
Absolutely. I think they receive a lot of exposure to vendors or other people in the community, or just topics that are not necessarily going to talk about their institution. I mean, we all have a journal club we have to attend, but let's say hearing information from someone who's very involved in the field is certainly different than researching and reading and looking at the poster.
Yeah, I think it is very beneficial. Yeah, this was my motivation to attend this event. Even like I was not part of Ohio River chapter, but I thought like it could be an opportunity to explore a different state and also different chapter.
Right.
Yeah, and I feel nice meeting you. And we had like a good discussion last night.
Yeah.
It was a good discussion. And just for recapping that, if you can tell us like how is it like a typical day for medical physics graduate? Like in first year and in second year, what is it?
Well, so for our residency, it's a little bit different. My day-to-day is pretty much the same. It's just the level of responsibility has changed. So I started out, we come in the morning, we review the morning books, make sure there's things behaving correctly, and then I can teach. We're involved heavily in the treatment planning process as well as obviously QA. There's every morning we have a meeting where we discuss all of our patients that are currently under planning or in the process of being planned, and determine what exactly is where we are in the planning process and what needs to be done next, or what challenges we're facing now, and as a group of business how to address those. And then we have, during lunch sometimes we'll do QA if the machine schedules permit it, and then of course we have patient-specific QA at the end. A good deal of my time is also spent writing research or doing research or participating in clinical research, clinical projects that are pushing the clinic forward, or allowing us to implement technologies or meet new procedures. And for me, I also spend a great deal of time teaching. So I'm actually very, very involved in teaching all the graduate students, so I teach treatment planning, I teach the processes, basic QA, all the way
So the courses would be like a mix of hands-on and like that.
Well, so for our program, for our graduate program, there's an undergraduate, or the first year is all didactic, is all patient, or is all book learning. And then the second year of our graduate students, they are 100% clinical. Oh, so they're in the clinic every day from 8 a.m. until whatever that time may be, and that allows us to give them a lot more experience and hands-on experience, and first-hand experience, really, that allows them to internalize the processes and understand them better from a more fundamental standpoint.
That's great. It was nice meeting you, and I got insights for residents. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Hi.
I'm Shahbaz Ahmed. I'm a graduate student at Wayne State University. And I'm reporting for this event, as we talked earlier.
Hi, I'm John Rizzo. I'm an app specialist with Research America. One of our new products that's just been released this year is Ray Care 2.0. And we have our first center in the United States that's currently using our OIS, which is Provision in Nashville. So we've been working collaboratively with them to develop the product. It's to compete with the other two big name OISs in the market. So we also have working with Quintus Market out of Canada to continue to develop this, as well as MD Anderson. So
That sounds interesting. And you guys, you're based as you told, in Germany.
actually, we're based in Stockholm,
Sweden.
Yep.
My apologies for that.
That's okay.
So, do you guys offer any internship for students? Or
That I don't know. We may in Stockholm. That's where the majority of the development occurs. So I would guess that there's probably some opportunities, but I would have to find out.
okay, and majorly it would be like software development
Yes.
and coding stuff.
Some coding, and it's nice to have a clinical crossover. From radon to coding and development. That's always a critical piece in developing any sort of setup.
That would be cool. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. It's a pleasure meeting you.
The project here is about managing the information. So the goal of this project, we need to create a global model, 3D model of the level of information. We have here 30 patients. So first we start with modeling each patient. Okay, we have for each patient we have the rating cycle, from starting from here, then the max, So after that we achieve the maximum of the exhale phase. Okay, and then we default we combine images of the max exhale with the inhale, and after that we extract the deformation field from this one, and after that we extract the displacement. You can see here the histogram of the displacement map, the total map, delta x, delta y. Here for the braiding cycle, we have z-axis will be downward, and then the x-axis will be left right, the y-axis will be posterior. And then after that, for each patient, I split the times displacement field. I started to the history number, and also that's how I will do it. You can see here the result. You can see the maximum will be through this axis, will be given 25, then the tax will be very small, the y will be 1.4. I calculated the standard deviation here, the max W also. After that, I choose the best log of the molecules for each patient that equals to data. I choose the biggest level, then I choose it as a reference.
The smallest one.
No, the biggest.
So the biggest one is reference. Okay.
As a reference, and then before each patient to this patient, and then after that I created my calculated. And I made sure also that the orientation for each patient is the same. So I did use the linear integration and made sure that we have the same orientation. And then after that, I used the Morpheus to do the image demonstrations.
Okay.
This is our final. This is our final model. You can see exactly the maximum displacement. You can see axis.
Yeah.
You can see
Yeah,
the
it's very
61.
over here. Yeah.
And then the X will be very small, the X will be 3.5, the Y will be 6.2. So we got the final model here. We are trying in the future work to do mathematical modeling of this model, and then we can do optimization.
Okay, like by optimization, you mean like dose optimization? Like treating patients only when they're exhaling or inhaling or something? It would help in that.
Yeah, also this will help like to know how much we need to go in the treatment plan.
Oh, yeah.
So we know the maximum will be 16 or 15 with the z-axis.
That's cool. It's kind of an interesting topic. Okay, thanks Kamran for video recording us. I believe testing is good.
Yeah.
You're seeing it like in good brightness.
Yeah, now I think it's good. Let's see. Come over here and check yourself.
Okay.